It's like rhythm and meter got up off the page and decided to move and glide with spirit. You ever see a black man walk in the room, Morris Cole style, like keep tag? It's like rhythm and meter got up off the page and decided to move and glide with spirit. You ever see a black man walk in the room, Morris Cole style, like keep tap dancing? I'm here. In those steps are messages, and you have to listen carefully. They trying to kill me. Stop, search, and frisk me. There are prayers in a black man's walk. Don't let them shoot me down where I'm standing. Don't let the white chalk lines find me. Don't let me die in the streets like an animal. I'm a man. I swear I'm a man. When a black man walks, a whole generation lives to see another day, another sunrise, another mouth to feed, another seed, another sacrifice saved, another poem, another hungry burning cross, another mother breathing in her son's ear. Move easy. Move quietly. Keep your head down, boy. Don't matter if you're 16 or 60. When a black man walks, he is always hunted. He is always animal. He is always standing out like a living corpse. He smells like a KKK appetizer. Nuggets of his own flesh dipped in his own blood. Ooh-wee! When a black man walks, he often finds white women walking closely behind him. But you can't blame a white sister for liking the way a black man walks. She understands some things and is cool with the fact that her babies will have nappy hair, even though she will not know how to comb it. When a black man walks, wait for it. Listen to the orchestra playing beneath his feet. Pay attention to the vibrations when he walks in a room. See how many faces change to fear in the presence of a black man. See how many women hold their purse so tightly their fingers grow numb. See how many men hide their eyes wishing the darkness would go away. Maybe choke itself to death. That ugly two-third human being, that next to nothing black dot, that useless prison black spot. When a black man walks, every day he is like Jesus, paranoid of crucifixion. Every day he is like Trayvon, knowing that his hoodie had nothing to do with his last breath. If only bullets could kill racism, poverty, and the traumas of slavery. You pay attention when a black man walks. You listen when a black man walks. His feet have a mind of their own, a compass, a homing device. 400 years of directions. Find your way home safely. Don't let Jim Crow steal your soul. Don't let gentrification lose your memory. Don't let police brutality castrate you. Do what your mama said do. Run, run, run when their teeth are already covered in blood. Do what your mama said do. Run, run, run when a black man walks. He ain't got time to walk. Death is always like, black men are the easiest to find. They are the strongest but the most fragile. They are the calm and the storm. They die like they expect to. When a black man walks, think of it as a masterpiece, a beautiful song that you may only hear once. Cherish it. You may never hear it again.
Do you know what it's like to hear or see or feel a black man walking? Not a black boy, not a black male, but a black man walking. Woo! That one is this topic. Well, let me welcome you to the another session of DaAfrican Speaks. This topic is the one that hits the heart because this is my journey. This is my journey. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks on the sister's journey. Today, we talking about the rise of the African within the black male. What? The rise of the African within the black male, and the rise of the African is our social media Pan-African movement where we seek to bring black people together under one umbrella. So if you're watching us on Facebook, y'all sort of pop up, like, comment, and share. I can see a lot of people watching. Say something. Give me a topic. If somebody wants to hear from somebody, give me their number. Let the African within them speak. I don't need to be the only voice. I don't mind that. And if you're watching us via YouTube, hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Like today, we had some time coming on because we were supposed to have a guest and the guest didn't make it, so I had to prepare this particular session that was supposed to be done next week. So I had to prepare it tonight. And so I've been meditating, I've been praying, I've been digging and digging and digging deep. And it was just as profound as the last topic, which is the journey for a black woman into the divine feminine, where she is experiencing who she is and regaining herself and her identity by defining it the way God called her to be. The way God called her to be. That's a whole different conversation. How did God call you as a woman? Not as you choose, but as intended, as divinely intended, because you came with an assignment. And we talked and we went through the phase, and the last phase was the art of selfless self-care. And we dealt with the fact that, you know, the black woman going through the things that she had to go through to become her, to have a vision or an image, a silhouette even, of who God called her to be. And we shared some of the definition of what it meant to be or have or embody the characteristics of the divine feminine. Intuitive, collaborative, nurturing, emotional, creative, sensual. Sisters become more softer. We want to talk about this. Compassionate, gentle, flowing. She's present. She's in her sasa, her now. She doesn't worry about the Zumani. She walks forward in her sasa. And so we talked about what it takes for a sister to get to this point. And I was always told, you know, brother, when you put this show together, make sure you have some strong female topics. The comments and the conversations and the text messages and the calls that I got, man, a lot of them deeply appreciated. So one love, sisters that were watching. And then I had some sisters get mad because I was right about a lot of things. Who do you think you are? Like, brothers are not. I had one friend who felt offended that a black man wants to get to learn what it means in terms of what it means, what the divine feminine means. What am I supposed to be looking for in a partner? I got that Bonnie and Clyde. No, we ain't trying to be Bonnie and Clyde. We trying to be Pharaoh and Nefertiti. Forget that. You want to call yourself the Black Bonnie and Clyde? No, you can have you so much to choose from when you're seeking the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And with us dealing with the divine masculine, we have it, the topic for the night, the return of the king. What? Woo! And I didn't even know what I was going to talk, you know, how I was going to use it, because I didn't want to use the, you know, the journey to the divine feminine or the divine masculine, because we used it. But it was something, and it says the return of the king. That's, I could feel that one. The power in the eyes, the image, the black man's journey home. Ain't that something? We are Africans not because we are born in Africa, but because Africa is born in us. Yes. And so the same spiritual journey that the sisters are taking, you have some of us brothers taking it. And again, this particular concept and these topics came because we were celebrating Mother's Day, and I said, you know, right behind Mother's Day, boom, we got Father's Day. And so I know in my effort to become the African within, my effort to become the African within, I remember that Father's Day that woke me up. And I was trying to find forgiveness for not being the father and the companion I was supposed to be, and giving in to spiritual, mental, psychological deficiencies. And so one Father's Day, I was seeking to be forgiven by the great I am, the Father that the Creator is in my life. And I heard the words, how are you going to ask the Father that you haven't seen to forgive you if you can't forgive the Father that you have seen? And this was the issues of my stepdad. And that Father's Day, I called my mother. You know, he's been in my life since I was 6th grade. And that Father's Day, I called my mother and I told her, I said, hey, Ma, what is he doing for Father's Day? And I've never done that before. Never done that. And she said nothing. He's not going to church. He's not going to service. He's just going to be in the house in the bed. I said, get the man up, get the man in the shower, and get him in the bed. I mean, get him to service, take him to church. She's like, but he has nothing for Easter. I mean, Father's Day to wear. I said, just tell me when he's in the shower. I'm 15 minutes away. And so he goes in the shower. I run in the house and I lay it on the bed. Brand new, fully tailored suit. Had a choice of of shirts, pocket squares, shoes, and socks. Set it up, different belts. And her eyes was just big, and she just smiled, and I just nodded, and I left. Because it wasn't for me to receive, it was just only for me to give. And when he called me, when he came out, I said, how did he look? Oh, he had a fedora too, hooked him up with the hat. And he called me after service. You know, I said, how'd he feel, Ma? And he said he felt proud, he felt strong. He felt loved, he felt cared for. You should have seen him. His chest was sticking out, and he's walking in there. And, you know, he said his chest was poked out, his head was up. And he was like, yeah, I'm a father. Yes, I'm cared for. And knowing my dad, I grew up with GQ magazines all over the place. And so I learned fashion by watching him read these GQ magazines. So when it came to suits and tailoring, and if anybody seen the brother wear a suit, the brother know how to put on a suit, right? That complex dress with patterns and colors, I got the skills. But I get it from him and my mom. And so I knew what he would love. And at that time, there was no price tag, right? And so he calls me and he says, son, this is fitted. I said, I know. He said, no, this is fitted for me. I said, yeah, I know. And he was like, how did you know my measurements? Been loving fashion since you walked in my life. Been watching you dress since you walked in my life. And I'm in my 30s at the time that I'm having this conversation with him. And he's been in my life since I was in the 6th grade. So that's about 11, right? 12, maybe. And I said, you're my father. I should know your measurements. I should know what you wear if I'm your son. And that was one of the most, I'm getting emotional now, one of the most emotional moments in my life, because it was my experience of a deep forgiveness to my father. The replacement of my biological father, which was my stepdad. At the time, my real dad was still around, and, me and him was friends, and, it was no really issues I had with my dad. I did have another experience from my real dad, and that's something spiritual, but we'll talk about that later. And at that moment, then I felt like, wow, I can actually seek forgiveness. If I can seek out to forgive the wrong that I felt that was done to me, and we're not going to talk about his wrongs, and hopefully, well, I can actually get him on the show. I said, if I get him on the show, you're going to hear a real conversation of what it takes to be that man. Because nowadays, when you look at it, we still do have a lot of percentages of our families without fathers in them. And this man, who was my stepdad, as I got older, when we met and I was in elementary school, he said, you function like you was a man. You wasn't a child. I said, I know. I was a grown man at 7. Y'all know that story. If not, here's the story. My father left when I was 7. And he sat me on his lap. He said, this is your family. Man up and take care of them. In my head, as a son being held by his father, that was my mission. And so I immediately turned off certain childhood ways because I had to man up. And I love what I went through because it got us to where we need to be, and it got me here. It allowed me to set responsibility. But when my stepdad come into my life, when my father comes into my life, and I call both of them my fathers. I don't usually say step because I don't believe in that. I don't feel that. So he's my father, right? And I'll say 1 and 2, father number 2. Because in African spirituality, every male in the community, in the village is your father. And so in that space, we would talk, and he was like, you were on a whole nother thinking level. So I didn't have to talk to you as a child. I could talk to you as a man, and we could actually give and take information, concepts, ideas, life, because I was focusing on what does it mean to be a man. Not the fact that I succeeded, but that was always my decision. Anytime I came across to a crossroads, I would ask myself, what would a man do? And then what was key about how did you define what a man was? I had to, I got my manisms from comic books. Even though we had thugs and everybody else in the street, how they say brothers pick up who man is. I'm like, nah, I can look and tell that you're not all what you crack up to be. My analytical thinking was a little bit different because most sons are left by their fathers with no information. My father set me on course to say, I need you to be responsible like a man because I'm not going to be around. And immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, because I was his oldest son from my mom, I took that torch and said, I got this. I got this. At 7. And so I had to learn how to have that experience. And my mother had it. I could tell you my mother had it hard. She had it hard. Shoot. My daughter's mother had it hard. Because I was 100% Y chromosome. I come as hard as they come. Them streets make you hard. Me trying to show soft or love or affection was hard. I could not do that. Literally, I could not do that. And so those who know me now in a space where I'm saying I couldn't do that, to know me now is to know that there was a transformation. And in that space, because inside the psyche of a man that has been conditioned to disconnect from his children and disconnect from his woman, his family, his responsibilities, his land, what? His culture, his tradition, his language. This sits inside of us, the shadow of a king that seeks to come out. The shadow of a king that says, wait a minute, just don't feel right. Wait a minute, this don't smell or taste right. Wait a minute, this don't look right. And when you're having those experiences, those are those visions or those words or those voices of those ancestors speaking to you. Now the issue is, are you brave enough to embrace what you can't see? Are you brave enough to embrace what you can't touch? Are you brave enough to embrace what you absolutely feel? That is pushing on a man's ego. Why? Because he has no proof. One of the things that is most strongest about being a man or a male, let's get that male that transitions into a man, because you have males who transitions into feminines, and you have males who stay males. You have boys who are males that never manifest into a level of maturity which produces man. There's a lot of things that we're going through. There's a lot of struggles that we're going through. And this conversation is for sisters with sons. It's with men with sons. Men who got brothers who talking man to man. And women and their husbands. Or they significant others. Or just women who are single looking for not boys, not males, but man. Because most of them, even now, they sit there and talk about, I won't settle. You don't even know what a man looks like. How do I know? Because it's few and far between. I'm the prize. No. We're the rarity. Together we're the prize. But the black man is a rarity. And I don't know how many sisters that I've met and talked to who will say, I knew you were coming, but I wasn't ready. Most of them don't know what it feels like to be around a true man that walks in the spirit of a king. Because once you become man, then you be moved to spiritually become royal. That's different. Male, boy, man, king. Something different. King. And so in this space, brothers are realizing that the sisters are not playing. You have sisters who are comfortable in their slavehood, where they are becoming commodities to capitalism. Women are say, you know what? We know what it was like to be enslaved and be exploited and not receive the financial benefits from our exploitation. So let us completely dismantle any sense of honor, integrity, decency, respect, and let's eat, because there are no kings, let alone males, that are taking care of us. So we have to give in to the system in which we're in just so that we can survive. But you have some sisters who are moving past that level of exploitation and saying we have to accept the spiritual journey to become greater according to who God and our ancestors have called us to be. So their spirits are completely on fire. They're walking into a vibration of pure divine energy. We're talking about the divine feminine. And brothers are realizing, because now if you go out, there are very few programs for black men. And then when I looked across as studying for black men, the way they painted the pictures for the journey to divine feminine is hard. It's very few areas where I can sit down and say they're not. And I had an argument with another friend, and she got upset because she was fighting for her friend's boyfriend or whatever it was. And I said, he's a good male. What you mean? I said, it's different to be a man and another thing to be a king. And I know it. Why? Because I'm on the journey. However, brothers are realizing that divine masculine has to be approached. And a lot of times when I'm sitting down and brothers are talking, and none of them are talking about surrender. And we're going to get with that. That's going to be on more part 2. But we're going to talk about it a little bit here. That surrender to your source. That's not easy. Sisters are embodying the experience of understanding the divine feminine. So if we say divine masculine, where does that come from? It doesn't come from here. It comes from something greater than ourselves. You can't get men in spiritual atmospheres to be openly submissive to the Creator publicly. It's hard. Why? Because it makes them look weak. And that's one of the things that they're trying not to do, is look weak. And we're going to talk about why. But they got to understand that in order to meet the sisters who are making this journey, they also have to make the journey. We out here calling our sisters queens. And who are you a queen under? Queen of what? Because some of them are trying to call themselves, I'm a queen, yet they're still slaves. I'm a queen of the slaves. Be careful of what type of crown you're trying to put on. But you have those sisters who are putting on that crown that the divine gives. That means and so you can see it in everything. Everything that she does is going to reflect the divine energy that she's walking in. And so the brothers realizing that we have to be able to do the same thing. when I realized that I needed to make this trip, I said, okay, I needed to open up just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And in that space, we realized that the universe is balanced. It's balanced. You can't have we have had our communities living off of the energy of black women. They had to embody, because it is in both of us. The males have feminine energy and masculine energy. Females have feminine energy, masculine energy. Now, the dominant energy, as men, it should be, your dominant energy should be, masculine. Some of them who are stuck in places want to embrace feminine. Now, there's no issue with a soft man. There's nothing with that. Because a soft man doesn't want a soft woman. A soft man needs a strong woman. Now, a strong woman can either, and she's okay if she's running things, she can have a mild man. Now, if you're a strong woman, you need some of them need a stronger man. I had one sister some while back was like, so and so, and can you handle a woman like? I said, hold up, this conversation is over, because there's no real man at a particular point has to say I can handle, because anytime a woman has to ask you, can you handle me, or I don't think you can handle me, means that she has no self-control. She is not a woman. She's a female. And that's clear. Now, there are spiritual journeys where sisters have had to take on, and we've had this conversation last year, right? Doesn't having two alphas cause conflict? Nicole, thank you. Sometimes and sometimes not. That's why I said if you're an alpha female, and at one point, and that's the thing, you can be an alpha female, but you understand that you're female. I had one of the most powerful sisters say something to me, or say to a group of sisters. And she got up, and she is still Lindiwe. So there's a woman in our community, Reverend Lindiwe. She was speaking to a bunch of sisters because sisters were kikiing because she got up when we was having a chase in our community, and her husband, which is son, died. Most powerful brother I've ever heard speak. Woo! I might do some clips, some voiceovers so y'all can hear them. So you had alpha and alpha, period. Building a black nation, period. Now, of course, the leadership was off a little bit. However, when he got up to go home after a party, she got up and took him home. She came back to the church gathering, and everybody was like, where'd you go? So, I went to put my husband to bed. And they was like, oh, excuse us? This feminine, you went to put him. She said, hold up, sisters. There's nothing with being wrong with being a powerful alpha female. There's nothing wrong with it. But never forget how to be feminine. Just because you're alpha doesn't mean that you have to lose your femininity. And I just had a call from Iyansa J, and that's who we supposed. Hopefully, Iyansa J will have you on the show next week. I sent you a text message, didn't get a reply. So, sister, yeah, I got you. In that space where you can't forget that. And there was one sister, she said, wow, and it was Iyansa J, right? We were talking, and we were talking about how sisters who are searching for the divine feminine are overly sexualized, right? And she said one thing about that is when you start truly seeking that power of God in you, you become softer. As a female, you become softer, but then the mate you choose, you completely melt. You don't forget that process. And then we were having a conversation with sisters in our community last year, Mother's Day after last. And they were saying, the sister said, a black woman has to learn to embody both energies and use them at will. She draws up the masculine energy. Why? Because there's no masculine energy present in her home but her. So she's doing something that she was not necessarily created to do. And she said, so when I meet a brother and I'm able to be feminine, I'm able to be a woman, I'm able to put that luggage or that weight of carrying the magnitude of both spirits at 100% all the time, just to keep my family and my community going. When I put down the luggage and I go down that block, I might be with this guy 2, 3, 4 years, and then all of a sudden it don't work, and then I got to go back 4 years to pick up the luggage and then run to catch up to my Sasa. I said, wow, never thought about that. So in this space, sisters, yes, brothers are learning to master their divine feminine and the divine masculine. And so in that space, that's when you know you are attracting your divine partner. And we're going to have a conversation about relationships later. Right now, we're just talking about feminine and masculine. We'll talk about bringing the energies together. That's another talk. I'm going to have I want to have a whole live community conversation about this. We're going to do that live. It's called Sip and Tell. We're going to have these discussions, right? And so this is a good way to set it up, right? And anyway, in that space where you know what you're attracting, why? Because you know who you are. You know who you are. And if you're attracting, sometimes God puts it to the test. A brother who's seeking his divine masculine, that energy that is given to him, that identity that is given to him by the Creator, he pulls a different, he gravitates, that the high frequency will allure something different. Now in that space where we are working on becoming king. And a lot of times now we call each other's kings and queens. It's not because we are at the time, but we're becoming. And that's okay. I speak at things that aren't as though they already are. And you pray that that's what's happening. But you have to know according to characteristics of what is, if somebody is actually on that journey or they're not on that journey. Now with a brother, as we talk to the journey to the divine feminine, the brother goes through almost the same situation. A black man goes through almost the same situation as a sister when it comes to trauma. He has to go through those processes to heal trauma. And it's a scary situation because there's a little nuance to him versus to her. They were masterful at tearing us apart. And so understanding the first trauma you get to when you start peeling back the onion. So you deal with your personal trauma, that life trauma. Whatever, if it was sexual, if it was emotional, if it was mental, if it's just abandonment, it's trauma. And then when you get from your personal life, now they're still dealing with the slavery, post-traumatic slave syndrome. On top of whatever you went through your period in time before you start the black man starts his journey, he's still dealing with the mark of slavery within. And what does that mean for a black man? We're going to talk about that so you could see why. How is it the fact that black women are raising their sons who don't take care of their family when their mother was there every day? Well, my father wasn't, but that's not the reason why he's not. Because integrity, respect, loyalty, honesty, that doesn't have a gender. Doesn't have a gender. Now, not saying that the man is not needed, because we definitely are needed. But there's something else going on that we can't see. We haven't been able to see. And I've been looking at it and I said, I'm going to write this book because I can't, no one's talking about it, but I am. And so in that space, that trauma, and this is why they said that they didn't care about the generations coming off the boat. They said they needed to control the black woman's womb. Yeah, we're going to get in. Now we're getting into the transition, because black women have 3 wombs: the mind, the womb of the heart, and the reproductive system. They wanted to control black women. Because the access to black women is the access to an entire people, no matter the gender. We're going to destroy what she creates. Malcolm X said that the mother is the first teacher of a child. The messages she gives the child, that child gives the world. And that's deep, deep, deep right there. And so in that space where they said, okay, all right, we're enslaving folk, but we have to come up with a concept that enslaves the woman. Why? Because if we had this, the proverb, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. So that's the same thing. If you educate a woman, you educate a nation. But also, if you destroy the womb of a woman, you destroy the products of that nation. You kill it. And so out of the womb, controlling the womb, they said if we can control the womb, we can inflict the concept of the principles of operant conditioning. Now, of course, you have inoperant conditioning and slavery. The first thing about slavery was and I'm moving kind of fast, which is the brutality of ignorance. We're gonna have to keep them from their language. Why? Because their language have power. They knew who we were. They knew how we saw ourselves. So how do you take a woman who sees herself as the manifestation of divine thought walking, the giver of light, the producer of humanity, and then the God body that is the king that stands beside her and protects whatever she produces, whatever she comes out of in terms of life? How do you destroy that? They didn't want to destroy that. They knew they couldn't. They said, we don't want her. We don't want him. We want what she produces. Because you're never going to stop that man from fighting for her. You're never going to stop that man for dying. I will die before I let you eat. And they said, yeah, we want you to want to die. We want you to sacrifice yourself. We need you to feel that way. Because what we're after is in her womb. It ain't her. It's what her womb will produce. Operant conditioning. And so in the story, when you have, how do you destroy a black man? Again, we're talking about the things that the black man has to fight through to get to this situation. You got to understand that this is we are in deep entrenched in spiritual warfare. And if he doesn't make it, it is the issue of spiritual warfare. Why? Because they were clear. As long as he don't know who he is, he'll never stand up for her. Long as he don't have a clue, he ain't never going to fight for her. He's always going to think about himself first. How do we know? Come on. Let us make a slave. I was looking at, it was either Du Bois, his synopsis on this, and Frederick Douglass. It's Frederick Douglass's synopsis on Let Us Make a Slave. Now, in that, he talked about, in the book, it talks about how they had to break us. And they compared it to buck breaking. So, and it's the process of operant conditioning, which is the process of controlling the black woman's womb. Now, the issue of ignorance, the brutality of ignorance. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is brutal. The brutality of ignorance is such that it can make you dead while alive. We are the living dead. People who are out there self-exploiting themselves, look at them as the living dead. Individuals who are not finding their identity in God are the living dead. Individuals who seek to always remove themselves from their culture, their heritage, their tradition is a part of the living dead, because you don't know what living is until you surrender to what God called you to surrender to. Woo! How powerful is that? So in the space of let us make a slave, they needed to have a pregnant woman. So they got her pregnant. Now she's carrying his child. Let's get this. So look at who they are. Look at the power in which they stand in the culture that you can't break them. And so what they did was she had to have 2 kids. She had to have a child on her hand and a child in her stomach in order to control her womb. You're like, what? Man, if y'all didn't ever look at the details of this book and how they set to control us for 1,000 years. And in that conversation, they said, well, what we're going to do while she is pregnant with his child and she's holding the other baby's hand, both males, because that male child is power. That is the protector. So not only are he got these males, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to the man. And this is why psychologically, unconsciously, black men are scared to be men and resorting into an experience where they don't even walk into any sense of masculinity. This is psychological and spiritual warfare we're dealing with. Sisters, they trying to make you make this journey by yourself. So what they did was they beat the woman in front of him while he held them down. And he's trying to fight. He never gave up the fight when you read the book. And so they beat her. And they hurt the kids a little bit. And he's trying to fight. Then they dismantled his members, took his head off, his arms off, and his legs off. She's sitting there pregnant with a child with a newborn in a hand. And she just looked. And then they beat every man to the inch of their lives. They said, we know we can't break them. That's not what we're trying to break. We're not trying to break the men. We're trying to destroy her womb. She's got to be fearful of everything that comes out of her. Because the first line of defense or the first line of teaching is going to be the mother. The first line of teaching for us to be great, it's going to be the women. So a woman can't have a king if she's in fear for his life. Because what has happened over 400 years, she taught her children how to survive. She taught the males, after watching what they did to the generation that they did not want, which was the initial slaves. No, we need them to help condition you, but we don't care because they're not going to make us money. We're making them money. It is us that they were shooting for. Hundreds of generations of years later, it's us they were vibing for. Coming out of the mother's womb and her making sure that we stay in order. And I have some friends who are listening, and I'm not going to say no names, but when I sit down and tell you, you're killing your son. Because if you're going to raise him up to do something, you're going to raise him on the basis of self-determination that God called you with a purpose, for a purpose. Yes, we have to survive. That's the shield. But then you also have to have the weapon in the other hand. That you got to build, block and build. They only needed the generations, that one generation. They said it wasn't the individuals coming off the boat is what the woman was going to produce. Why? Because they knew that if they can get her to teach her children that are coming out of her womb to walk in line of what society dictates for them to stay alive, they're going to be, it's an unconscious process of opera conditioning. That's why they could release, after a while, release the brutality of ignorance, some of it, and the physical brutality, and watch this mental slavery continue. My mother used to look at me and she said, boy, I fear for you. Why? She said, because you can't conform. What? She said, because you don't conform. I had a couple of sisters on the show where when they was watching the shootings and the killing. Is my son next? What? We're supposed to be assassinated. Like the sister said, he's going to die like he survived because it's the only way we're going to build our kingdom back. Some of us is going to have to be sacrificed. Not as a sacrifice of, oh, you go kill, but we're going to stand up to fight. If you want your child to be a man, he's got to build his own. They didn't need the first generation. Just needed that next one. Because what one generation will slowly tolerate, the next generation will embrace. The black man began to embrace his independence to Eurocentric society. We want to talk about what it takes to be a dad today. That's where we at. Embracing the divine masculine, the return of the king. This spiritual warfare that is set around us where we're not being raised to go against the system. Somewhere along the line, God and the ancestors are breaking through to us. I am not my brothers. And they're trying to figure out, how'd you get it? My mother said I came out the womb on fire. Every now and then, somewhere along the way, there's a black man that comes up. And for us in our community, his name is Jeramogi Baby Ajim. And the next week is Father's Day. And we give him a ceremony because he came out empowered and inflamed. And he charged the other blacks. So when I start doing this, I'm doing this from the experience that I had. The return of the king. Black man's journey home. Where? Black man's journey back to God, back to his culture, his heritage, his people, his woman, his children. That's what this is about. So if you had a dad, or if you got a male in your family that you could celebrate, it's worth celebrating. Why? Because of what we had to go through to just see ourselves being responsible, not only to the women we have, but to the children we produce with us. Because in slavery, you know what it said, keep the body, take the mind. Imagine 400 years of listening to your woman get raped. You have to disassociate yourself with a certain level of connection to the black woman while you standing outside the plantation house. Oh, okay, I'm speaking to quite a few ancestors in my bloodline who had to go through that. I'm sorry, this is about to get emotional. We had to stand outside, and I'm saying we because they're talking to me. We had to stand outside the master's house while we heard what was going on. We couldn't develop an inclination or a connection because if I ran in there to fight for her, I'd be dead and she'd be on this earth by herself. So I had to suck it up and not develop a particular level or a depth of attachment. When she had my child and I got a chance to touch it so that I didn't feel connected to that child because he made sure I felt like I'd had nothing. I'm not a man. So he takes what is produced with my gene and takes it away and sells it somewhere. You never see a slave story with a father raising his child connected. They get sold out. Some of them keep them. I'm gonna switch out and trade. But he ain't, it ain't like, because they die for this. They will die for this. But they said, let's keep the body, take the mind. So in this experience where we have black men who can produce children and not take care of them, they're still slaves and they're struggling from that spiritual, psychological conditioning that is put in us not to connect. That's spiritual warfare and it's operant conditioning. I am following the system. Why? Because back then, black women and black children was the ward of the master. So we leave our women and children because we were conditioned for over 400 years to deal with it. And there is no spiritual church or program that is getting black men to deal with that issue. None. I was freed from that situation. Why? Because my father left at 7 and he gave me the responsibility. Now, if he didn't pass the torch, that was a rites of passage. So for the rites of passage my entire life, I'm trying to fulfill what my father told me to do. Be a man. Now, I had no definition. I had to try to figure it out. And I some areas I failed, but I can tell you I'm succeeding now. DaAfrican speaks. But people had to be hurt in the process. And sometimes that's what it is. We are hurt in the process of healing. Why? Because they kept our body and stole our minds. But in that process, when we're trying to come out of that, when we're trying to be who we are called to be, when our ancestors are reaching in us and saying, come back home, it's ugly. It gets ugly. So for those dads who are dads and those men who are fathers, we in our community, a kid can have multiple fathers. And I have a blessed experience. Ayo, Bayete, Nayamka. Love y'all. I remember my brother coming to my community and everybody's playing around me, Zara. And they come in and I get out the car and they're yelling, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I'm picking up kids and spinning them around and hugging kids and we having a good time. My brother, oh, how many kids you got? I said, 8. I'm telling mommy. He didn't understand the value of community. Somewhere along the line when my father jetted and he passed that torch, ancestors was talking to me. I had some other traumas that triggered that. But what happens is when you have that experience, they speak to us. And by no means does a black man want to live in this world without his woman. No man really wants to grow old and have no love. My mentor broke down in tears in his last days because he knew who he was supposed to be in love with, but she was too conditioned to see what she was. She was in a witness protection program. If y'all know what that is. And he was woke and she wasn't. Let's just say that. And he didn't know how to bring her to that experience. And then later in his life, after the separation, he figured it out. So he came back to bring it in. Now, someone who doesn't want to wake up, you know what Harriet Tubman said, I would free more of them if they knew they were slaves. Why? Because your body was here, but they took your mind. And so a lot of black men want to see the black woman on that same stage. They want to be there. We want to be there with you. We want to stand up with you. We want to fight with you. We want to produce the children. When they say, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, it's because we are taking back our divine identity. And each generation has a little bit more to unpeel as a race, as a community. And everything is done for the sake of self-determination. I said, if a man hasn't reached, when a man becomes king, he's a man because he embodies and he embraces everything about who God called him to be, not just survive. Now, we had a generation that had to survive from day to day. We're in that generation now of awareness where we can come out of survival and move into a self-determined mindset, spiritual mindset, and begin to plant the seeds of true independence. You have nations right now, and this is going to be part of next week. building black nations with no influence of European structure. That's when you walk into royalty. Sister got mad at me because I was like, yeah, he's a good male. Why you? I didn't disrespect him. He's a good male. And we need to allow God to continue working with him so that he can walk into his, manhood, and then his royalty levels to this game. And so it's always spiritual warfare. And that's why it's deeply important to know thyself. The brutality of ignorance kept us from understanding who we were in God, because you cannot enslave a people who understands their relationship to the divine. This journey that we're having and everything that we're experiencing will be is about that journey to become godlike, to do what we're called to do. Know thyself. In this space, in this time where the black man begins, the king begins to return. He's embracing everything. You had a dad, you have a male in your life. Next week is going to be that week. Not this Sunday coming, but that following Sunday. We're going to talk about this again before Sunday. Give it up, because he had to watch his children disappear the same way a mother does. Sisters are going to be like, well, what about it? What happened with women going through it? I said, yeah, women, you had to watch your children disappear. But then the minute that another one shows up, you were always automatically, and if you was listening during the experience of the divine feminine, there are certain things that are built into you that resembles the elements of the creator that you, regardless what's happening to you, you can't get away from. He didn't build us like that. He didn't build us like that. Our bodies don't feed our children. Our bodies don't house our children. Our bodies don't develop our children. He didn't build us with that innate connection where you could feel your kid across plantations. Pray for your kid. He didn't build us like that. The creator didn't build us like that. And then he. And so it does take a different level or a different process for black men. And I sit down and say, some of us are blessed who will raise their children and somebody else's kid. One of my babies called me Soul Pops. Man, that had me in tears. In your soul, in my soul, I know that you my father. And you've given me the experience of what it feels like to have one. Man, if I'm not into my royalty, I don't know what it is when I got those words. You heard me, soul daughter. She always watches. Ain't that something? The return of the king. When you celebrate Father's Day coming up, look at it a little bit different. It was more than just him as a dollar, or him being in a house. We'll deal with the emotional disconnection, all that, because just because they're in the house don't, yeah, he was there. Look at what we got to fight through to get to that point where we're king. Not only were we just before we're king, but we man. It's a whole different story. Whole different type of journey. They wanted to control your womb so that you could condition your male child not to fight on your behalf. Now, male child will always fight for you. But look at how many generations have turned over. Are they trying to take over and build their own? So there's still more work to be done. So I'm going to applaud my brothers. I'm going to applaud my brothers, and we're going to go deep into this journey of the divine masculine, because there's a shadow of a king. There's a shadow of royalty that is sitting in you, and they hid it from you. And we got to dive into those epigenetic data that is in your DNA to unlock who you are. So join me on this journey as this black man takes you on that road of how I made it home. Ain't that something? What hit me is that old gospel, how I got over. What? How did I get over? Yeah, it was a blessing from the Creator. So we are in an area where we have more information, more access than anything. We knew that spirituality is our key. And so there are things within inside us that we have to go deep into to fight against. Ours are a little bit different. There is not a doctor or a PhD alive that even talks about how black men were spiritually orchestrated not to take care of their children, not to work in the communities, not to believe in family. The white man will do it all. So you have to do nothing. That's 400 years of conditioning. And I had someone else who was a powerful thinker said, I've never heard anybody analyze that aspect right there. I said, well, I'm officially on the journey. Why? Because I did a lot of destruction in my time when I was a boy. But they say when you become a man, you put away those childish ways. I'm not completely healed, but I be dang if I ain't that returning that king returning. We're gonna claim my throne. I can't wait till I build this up next session. Hopefully y'all enjoy it. Y'all brothers, y'all sisters, get y'all brothers and y'all sit down and watch and have the conversation. Because we'll talk about the emotional distance. We'll talk about the lockup, the mental distance, intellectual differences next week. But the king coming home. If it's not this generation, it will definitely be the next. One love. See you next week.